Well, Razorback fans, it was another banner weekend in Fayetteville. Hey, you got the win, but man, it didn't look good, didn't feel good. What do we do about this? Well, let's talk about it on today's Locked On Razorbacks podcast.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I am your host, John Neighbors. I am also the host of Inside Arkansas Live, which you can catch every weekday starting at noon on Inside Arkansas and InsideArkansas.com. Today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Go to 5hourenergy.com and use promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your next order. Hope everybody had a wonderful weekend. And I know that it was one that Arkansas had won their football game against UAB. And honestly, if I would have told most of you, if not all of you, that you were going to win the game against UAB, you'd be like, okay, great. 2-1 now. Should be 3-0, but that's neither here nor there. But you're 2-1 because you took care of business against UAB. So everything's great, right? Not really. Arkansas won this game 37-27. You won by 10 points. Now, I'm going to be clear in saying this, that a win is a win is a win. You'll take a win no matter what. Because at the end of the day, when you go through this entire season and say if Arkansas ends up going something crazy, like 9-3 or something, I'm not predicting that, but say if they did, no one's going to look back and be like, you know what, 9-3 was great, but that game against UAB, they only won by 10. No one's going to say that. It's just going to be about wins and losses. So you can never live in the moment of saying you're going to be apologetic for a win or upset over a win or anything. However, that's not what I'm upset about. I'm not upset about the win. I'm upset about the nature of the win. I'm upset by the performance in this win. Arkansas against UAB was down in this game by 2 scores. They were down in this game by 2 scores. At halftime, it was tied at 20 against UAB at home. Now, UAB is not a good football team. They're not. Let's not even sugarcoat it. They're not a good football team, especially comparatively speaking, dealing with the Razorbacks, an SEC football team. UAB is a team that has struggled in times against other opponents already this year, much lesser opponents than Arkansas. And for whatever reason, Arkansas just maintains this idea of playing to their competition. They'll play up or they'll play down. Doesn't matter. It just depends on the type of team you are. And we'll talk about it being in Fayetteville. But Arkansas had 427 offensive yards, 161 passing, which ain't great, and 266 rushing yards. So he had 427 total yards. UAB had 354. So you're talking about an 80-yard difference between these two teams. Arkansas, and we'll talk about Taylor Green specifically, but Arkansas with Taylor Green went 11 of 26 for 161 yards and 1 interception. It's 42% completion percentage. Zeno, on the other hand, for UAB, goes 23 of 32 for 235 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. Those numbers should have been opposite. It should have been vice versa, but it wasn't. Luckily for Arkansas, they can still run the ball really effectively. Landon Jackson still is that dude. 15 carries for 147 yards and a touchdown. He was averaging 10 yards a carry roughly. 10 yards a pop. But Taylor Green, even though he didn't do much with his arm, he definitely did something with his legs. He doesn't have one. He has 2. Taylor Green had 17 carries for 96 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Rodney Hill got in for 3 carries for 23 yards. Even a Braylon Russell sighting for the first time in his Razorback career. He had 1 carry for 2 yards, but it was a touchdown, so it was a big one. And Taylor Green having 11 completions, you're wondering who they went to? 8 of them went to Andrew Armstrong. That was it. 8 of them. Isaiah Satani had 2, and Landon Jackson had 1. So you had 10 of your 11 completed passes going to wide receivers and 1 of them going to running back. Now, we'll talk about the defense, too. Like, there's a lot to unpack here, and I'll do my best try to. But the fact that you had this type of performance offensively against a UAPB team that Shouldn't even be on the same field of you as when it comes to your talent, when it comes to your ability and your physicality and everything, it's pretty alarming and it's pretty disgusting. Again, I know you won, but there was no excuse for this game to go to the way that it did. There was no excuse for the lack of energy and the lack of focus and the lack of any of this stuff. Like, there was just no excuse for it. And when I go, and offense was not great, don't get me wrong, but the defense, good grief. So Jaden Johnson and Steven Dix were the leading tacklers. They both had 10 tackles a pop. Xavion Story had 8. But the tackle number doesn't matter, right? Well, I don't even know why we're looking at it. It doesn't matter. The problem is you were missing guys in the secondary. You don't have Jalen Braxton and you don't have Hudson Clark. I don't care what anybody says about Hudson Clark. I know everybody knows that I'm a big fan of his, but there's a reason why Hudson Clark plays. You can hate it or whatever, but there's a reason why he plays. It's because he's good. At the very minimum, he's helpful. He helps this defense. And not having him, not having Braxton, hurt this secondary. It's no excuse, but it did. And they paid the price. The secondary looked awful. Nico Slaughter, the transfer from Tennessee, got torched at times on these plays. He did not look good. And even if we want to take it one step further, because we could sit here and talk about him, and Singletary had his moments too where he didn't look great, but all of that to say, the defensive line is the most disappointing thing I'm seeing so far right now. And this is coming from somebody who really likes Deke Adams. I think they did a great job in the portal. I think they did a great job of, putting these pieces together and trying to do the best that they could to make it be a deep defensive line. But Landon Jackson is MIA. He is on a milk carton somewhere. I can't think of many plays that the preseason All-SEC player has made or has been on. It hasn't happened. It said he had 5 tackles in this game. All right. But also said he had 2 pass breakups. Okay. But it's not just that. It's not just the numbers. It's the lack of pressure. This defense is not getting any pressure on the quarterback. And that is extremely alarming for me. Because if you can't get pressure against UAB, how are you going to get pressure against Auburn? How are you going to get pressure against A&M? How are you going to get pressure against any team in the SEC? You have not been able to get any pressure. And honestly, where was that defense that we saw against Oklahoma State that held the Doak Walker Award winner to nothing on the ground? It was non-existent. This wasn't there. I'm concerned about that part. And I think that's what also makes this extraordinarily frustrating too, is you got 3 phases or 3 different games that have happened so far that Arkansas has been a part of, and each game has been so completely, vastly different to where I don't know what this team is. They had the game where their defense looked amazing, the defense looked really good until the end, and the defense looked bad. They had a game where the offense looked amazing, the offense looked pretty good for the most part until the end, and then you have an offense that didn't look good at all. What are we supposed to make out of this? I know it's 3 games and it now gets down to the nitty-gritty in the SEC, but how am I supposed to even know what the crap to say? What is this team? Who are we talking about here? Who's good? Who's not? I have no idea. But you know what? I'll save this because this is something I'm going to work into the next topic. Because it's something I want to deal with, talking about Razorbacks game. So stay with me here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. All right, folks, we know that a lot of you Razorback fans out there, you are all about wearing your Razorback apparel, and there's nothing better than when it comes to the vintage apparel from Home Field Apparel. If you haven't seen the Home Field Apparel that they have to check out, visit their website at homefieldapparel.com, because when you go over there, you'll see all the greatness that they have when it comes to the hog running through the A, the hog leaning on the A, the old Razorback logo, the slobber hog, all those great vintage apparel items that you always loved and wanted for a long time. They have it at Home Field Apparel, and they just continue to grow their catalog each and every year. It gets more and more incredible. They have different apparel items to choose from as well. So you have to check it out. Again, you will not be disappointed, especially if you're a big Razorback fan that loves the history and tradition and all the good stuff from way back when. Home Field Apparel is where you got. So you just go over to homefieldapparel.com. That's homefieldapparel.com. Use promo code PIG24. That's PIG24. PIG24. Use that promo code. You can see all the different items that they have to choose from when it comes to all things Arkansas. When it comes to the greatest of vintage apparel, do it with Home Field Apparel at homefieldapparel.com. We're also brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Listen, we all get tired. After a long weekend, we all get tired. Then it's the Monday. We're like, oh, geez, we're going to have to deal with this Monday lifestyle that nobody wants to deal with and nobody wants to get through. But you got to get through it. You got to make it work. But that's what 5 Hour Energy is going to help you with. When you have a long list of things to do at work, not only for the day, but for the week, just take that 5 Hour Energy shot and you can get everything checked off your list. We also know that when it comes to watching sports, because there's a lot to watch. I mean, like on Saturdays, when you got from sun up to sundown, nothing but football games to watch. And then on Sunday, you do the same thing again. You got to take that 5 Hour Energy to stay awake and see that intense overtime game that maybe you want to make sure you stay up for no matter what it is. So take that 5 Hour Energy shot in the morning and you can start your day. No questions asked. The 5 Hour Energy is the brand hardworking people like you and me have trusted for over 20 years to give them alert, energized feeling when we all need to throughout a busy, hectic day. And you always know where to find 5 Hour Energy shots. It's right at the cash register at nearly every convenience, drug, and grocery store nationwide. Stock up on money-saving multi-packs to make sure you never run out of delicious, energizing 5 Hour Energy shots. If you just go over to 5hourenergy.com, that is the number 5hourenergy.com, and get some 5 Hour Energy product today, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your next order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on any subscriptions orders. So just head over to 5hourenergy.com today. That's 5hourenergy.com. All right, so moving on into the next segment of the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. So I'm going to talk about Taylen Green in a second. I will, I promise. Because that's really what I wanted to get into here because there's been some questions about him. But I wanted to use this time too to also talk about the most frustrated thing I had on Saturday. You know, the performance, all of that is not great, and we can sit here and break it down from position by position, everything like that. Like totally get it, totally understand it, all of that. But the thing is that really just gets me more so than anything is the lack of performance in front of the home team and in front of the home fans. Once again, the game in Fayetteville has been on the receiving end of a poor performance. And I wish I could sit here and say why and understand why it is that way. But it's really puzzling but alarming. That crowd in Fayetteville at Donald W. Reynolds Razorback Stadium, I know they had the official announced attendance, but I don't even care about that. I look up at the game. I was there at the game. I looked up in the upper deck, and it was pretty much filled. I think there was at least 70,000 people there for a game against UAB. Beautiful weather. People have been tailgating. It's family weekend for the university. All of that. And Razorback fans, even though it was like you lost to Oklahoma State in a frustrating way, people still showed up. They still showed up, still were excited, still out there to support the team. And how do you reward them? You reward them with a substandard, subpar performance. You won, but there was nothing exciting about it. And it just is really bothersome to me. Home field advantage should mean something. And Razorback fans especially, they deserve to be entertained when they spend all that money and all that time traveling and coming to the games and everything like that. And you haven't given it to them. And it would be even something to where it was like, oh, well, you know, this team was just Chad Morris-esque and you just kept losing every game and you were just a terrible team by terrible coaches and all that. Because it wouldn't be right, but it would at least have some sort of explanation. This has zero explanation that makes any sense. Because you go on the road and you perform really good. You don't always win, but you perform better. Better than what most teams would on the road. You perform great in Little Rock. War Memorial Stadium. Past 2 years, those have been your biggest blowout games against those two opponents. But whenever you come into Fayetteville, your home stadium, from your home fans, Like you get to sleep in, I guess you don't sleep in your own bed because they have to go to the hotel, but you know what I mean? Like there's no travel. When that happens, the team just lays an egg and looks lackadaisical and just meh. And that's unacceptable. That has to change, and that has to change right now because you don't have any excuses anymore. You got 2 games coming up that are away from Fayetteville that are very winnable games. Not saying you're going to win, but they're winnable. And you have a chance to where if you can win at least one of those games, you're going to have probably a very nice crowd against a really, really, really good Tennessee team coming in on October 5th. You're in position to set yourself up for that. But I think it's just a little bit tiresome for the fans having to sit back and wonder, it's like, what do we do here? Like, we're loud, we show up. What do we do? You got to change that performance. And, of course, the thing with Taylor Green that I wanted to bring up is that people are already wondering and questioning. It's like, oh, should we move on? Should we go to Malachi Singleton? Or should get somebody another shot? No, not yet. Because my thing is that if Taylor Green was if everybody else played great and Taylor Green was the only reason that this game was close or that he was the mistake maker that made this team struggle and suffer, if he was turning the ball over like crazy and everything, then I would say, all right, maybe we think about it. Maybe we start talking about it. But this game was bigger than just Taylor Green. This was everything involved. This was everybody involved. Defense, special teams, coaching, everybody. Everybody was at fault here. So I'm not trying to bench Taylor Green to move on. Like that's way too early, way too soon. And I think that there's plenty of things that need to happen first, that this team needs to get fixed first before they have to worry about changing the situations at the quarterback position. So let's just wait on that, all right? I know everyone gets impatient sometimes. Let's just wait on that, and let's see what happens next, and then we can make our decisions from that. We'll talk about the SEC, though, and it's a weird conference, man. It's so weird, but we'll talk about that here on the other side of the break, so stay with us on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. All right, folks, you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little different for you. Right now, through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with that YouTube-based plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game anytime you want. All you need is a new Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. It's FanDuel.com. All right, so final segment here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. So we know about Arkansas and how they looked, and we'll get to hear from Sam Pittman later today, and I'm sure we'll have more reactions to that on tomorrow's press podcast. But the SEC is quite fascinating. There are teams that are not good. There are teams that are average, and then there's very, very few teams that are actually good, or at least have looked good so far. Without question, the weirdest one was Georgia, Kentucky. Georgia beat Kentucky on the road 13-12. Kentucky scored a field goal in every quarter. 13-12. Like, I don't know if it's Georgia being bad, but Kentucky is not a great team. I mean, they got smoked by South Carolina at home. But Georgia, I expected more out of it. And seeing that final score and seeing that game, again, it could just be an anomaly. I still believe Georgia's going to be one of the best teams in the country when it's all said and done. But that was not the type of performance that I was expecting out of them. So they're ones that kind of took a step back, in my opinion. Missouri struggled with Boston College at home, which is funny. Losing that. They won 27-21, but barely scraped by in that one. LSU's not great, and they beat South Carolina. South Carolina just crapped themselves in that game. Probably should have won it, but 36-33, LSU wins that one. LSU's an average team. Like, I don't think they're good. I don't think they're awful, but they're very average for all things considered. And A&M kind of the same way because they ended up smoking Florida. Like, Billy Napier is going to be fired, and he's going to be fired quickly, as he needs to be. This is ending fast, and it's a sinking ship. So I don't know where Florida's going to go from that. Now they're going to owe them a ton of money, but this thing's over and done with. I was really disappointed in Vanderbilt. They lost to Georgia State at home. That makes me mad because I had Vanderbilt winning that game. Should have known better. Why do I bet on the Commodores? So you had that, and then The other one was maybe surprising. This should be one that Arkansas wins. Toledo beat the brakes off of Mississippi State, 41-17. You know, he's not that 16-12 game that Arkansas lost in Little Rock was bad. Toledo went into Starkville and beat Mississippi State 41-17. Just absolute destruction. So those are a bunch of average teams. Then there's bad teams. Like Mississippi State's a bad team. Florida's a bad team. But then you have the good ones. Texas destroys UTSA 56-7. They're looking really nasty right now. Shout out to Bama. They went up to Wisconsin and just destroyed Wisconsin 42-10. Jalen Milroe had 5 touchdowns, 3 of them through the air, 2 rushing. Ole Miss looks great, 40-6 over Wake Forest. Tennessee's the scary one, y'all. Tennessee's the real scary one. Tennessee played Kent State. I know Kent State's not good, but Tennessee was up on Kent State 65-0 at halftime. Tennessee scored 37 points in the first quarter. Just insanity. Absolute insanity. So the point is, I guess, did I miss a game? Oklahoma beat Tulane 34-19. So all in all, here it is. You got Texas. Texas is leading the pack. Texas is number 1 team. Texas is the best team in the conference right now. From what we've seen, they are the best team. After that, just again, based off what we've seen so far, even though I do believe Georgia's still a better team, Tennessee to me is the second best team in the conference. They've been playing everybody and they've just been destroying everybody. I think that they're right there. I think Ole Miss is right there, and Bama, and Georgia's still there too. But I'm just saying, it's what we've seen. Bama's looked great. Then after that, you kind of got a bunch of average teams, just kind of like whatever. You know, I don't really know if they're great, but they don't look great in some capacities. And where's Arkansas fit in that mix? Well, they're just like all the other teams where they're not great, but could be good, could be better. Never know. You never know, because you never know what team's going to show up. So through 3 games, it's, you know, we're trying to figure out what Arkansas is. I can't figure out what this conference is either. I can't figure out what college football in general is right now. I mean, for crying out loud, there was a lot of weird games that happened over the weekend, especially in the top 25, that really, led to some head scratchers. And people not really not knowing, like Michigan beat Arkansas State 28-18. Shout out to the Red Wolves. So none of it makes sense, but a lot of season left, folks. A lot of season left. Appreciate each and every one of you listening in and watching into the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or on Google Play. You can also get after me on Twitter at John Neighbors Show for any questions, comments, concerns that you may have, and we will keep it going from there. Same podcast time, same podcast channel tomorrow afternoon. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you then.